In our previous conversations with Wildlife and Managing Director of Kwandwe Private Game Reserve, Angus Sholto-Douglas.
So our game breeding initiative started when the Schwest family bought the property from sort of the previous partnership in around 2011. The bulk of our population just runs, wild on the property with the lions and everything, and we started realizing these things of value, and technological understanding of genetics was something we knew very little about, and it was fantastic to learn. I think the average ecotourism guest that comes to a private game reserve in South Africa in particular really comes here because they just want to see the major, what I call the big and hairy. It's a challenge for us, but it's more like a responsibility that we have to educate, particularly the international traveller.
We conclude our visit with Angus on Kwandwe.
Within wildlife ranching South Africa, WRSA, one of the pillars is ecotourism. And I think the term ecotourism is probably sometimes a bit broad, or sometimes a bit narrow, and we should see it in a broader context. I mean, there's nothing to say that, that any form of nature-based tourism, whether it be rock climbing or, paddling a kayak or, bow hunting or hunting, is not a form of ecotourism. I think what makes it a bit clearer is when you talk about consumptive and non-consumptive. But for me, any activity that takes place where it benefits the ecosystem, and the person is outdoors and is respectful and enjoying it, then that certainly forms part of that sort of broader context. And I think the fact that now that WRSA has made ecotourism sort of one of their directorships, then it shows that there is a need and a sort of an interest from all walks of the wildlife ranching industry to become more involved in that. And I think a lot naturally are involved in that already. The way that we just see, ecotourism is the role that it can play within tourism in our country is enormous. And the sort of inclusivity of the economy within wildlife ranching then becomes a little bit broader, or in fact much broader. So I think those are the kind of important aspects that ecotourism can play within wildlife ranching. And I think sometimes it's ecotourism is kind of that understanding that it must be in cotton wool over there on the side because nobody can really understand it. But I think if you go and talk to every private game reserve and how they interact with the wildlife ranches around them, the game capture units, you will actually see that there's so many similarities. We just shoot with a camera, but at the end of the day, they're very similar, and I think they have a lot of synergies, probably more so than what is recognized at the moment. I think a lot of the time the health of the wildlife industry is dictated to by the game sales. And I think, if you just look at what's happened to the game sale prices over the last 18 months, and then you come and talk to the people in the ecotourism side of the wildlife industry, you talk to the hunters, everybody's actually had a reasonable last 18 months. So it's to say that the health of the wildlife industry is sort of poorer because the game sales are down is just taking one small component of it. And I think a lot of the time what becomes more important is that you can justify the value of something. Value is very important to us in South Africa because it's what our private conservation model is built on. So we can't ignore that. But justifying the value is what becomes important. And I appreciate and I respect the fact that maybe some money has left the wildlife industry and that some people have got hurt in the downturn of the prices. But at the end of the day, we need to have justifiable prices. Like if somebody came and said that they paid X for an animal, how I must now justify it for them. It becomes very, very difficult. And so I think from this base of where we are now at the end of 2018, we're going to start seeing that there will be a settling in the wildlife industry. never think that there won't be two economies. There always are. I always use the analogy of horse breeding. You know, I watched on a YouTube clip of a racehorse being sold for several $1 million. I forget the exact figure, but you can still go and buy a pony for 2,000 Rand. So, and there will be all the prices in between that. And the same will continue. The pony at 2,000 Rand can't compete with the pedigree of the multi-million-dollar racehorse. So there will always be those two economies. But what's most important is that you can justify the value and the commercial value of the pony at 2,000 Rand. That's where it's. I think that's where we've got to at this point. And I still feel enormously positive about the wildlife industry. I think it shows within our investments during the year that we've made, I still see now that there's a much greater opportunity now for new entrants than there was 3 to 4 years ago, and that's what needs to be communicated to everybody.